Hello again, I am Jim Bob and welcome back to Marwell Manor. It's a little after 7 in the morning and we have another busy mowing day ahead of us. Today we're going to be making some silage bales. Let's just get our mower set connected up, there we go. Just ease our way out of here without clipping anything on the way. There we go, good stuff. Yeah, so today we're going to be attacking the second half of Field 19. This is the really big grass meadow that we have. Obviously, we did a lot of mowing on that first section there, and we tedded all of that and we turned it into hay, and then sold some of those bales to the zoo, and the rest of them we put into storage so that we have them for ourselves when we look to bring in maybe some animals a little bit later on, in terms of a little bit of feed for cows perhaps, certainly a little bit of food for sheep, because that's probably what we're going to concentrate first on, is sheep. And you can see that we do have some growth coming through on our soybean crop there as well. There's our scarecrows standing proud in the field, guarding against the birds. But this is the grass target that we're going for today, so let's get these mowers unfolded. A little bit of the other grass has grown back, or the grass has grown back a little bit on this other section, but as I say, we're going to be concentrating on this uncut section here. And this uncut section, this is essentially what will become our working field when we start working, this ground and cutting it up later in the year. Probably won't be too much longer actually before we start doing that. So this kind of split line that we have here, this is kind of indicative as to where the field is roughly going to start, and it'll be all this section that we're going to be mowing today. That is what will become our new crop field. So we're going to sort of run along the border of the fence, or the hedge here. Well, it's a bit of both, isn't it? A hedge and a fence. We'll run along here as this is our border. And then we'll try and straighten up a little bit as we go. And we're going to be baling all of this for silage. I'm toying with the idea of possibly keeping a few grass bales, but to be honest, I don't see a need for them. We don't need grass for cows. If we're going to go with TMR, then all we need is the materials for a TMR mix itself, so we can do that quite comfortably with just hay and silage. Likewise, we don't need to feed the cows hay and silage on top, we just need TMR. There are 3 different feed types available, being TMR, then hay and silage, and then grass. Those are the 3 different feed types that are available, and depending on which one you give to your cows will determine just how effective it is as a food, and how productive your livestock will be. But you don't need to put all 3 in. You don't even need to put 2 in. You just need one of those 3 food groups. So if you want to go with grass, then you can do. It's a quick and easy way to get some food in your troughs, but it will give you limited productivity on your cattle. If you want to go with hay and silage, then that'll certainly give you a much more respectable level of productivity, and you won't need the grass. And if you want to go the best way to feed your livestock, you want to go with TMR. It's a little hard to see over here. Let's get the lights on because of these shadows. There we go. Then you can just go with TMR. And again, if you go the TMR route, you don't have to give them grass and you don't have to give them separate hay and silage. Just the TMR will do. Now, one thing you'll find is that as the cows, create mess around their food trough, you'll end up putting in, a breakdown of the TMR back into the trough, and you will start to see the other sliders go up a little bit. But in order to, as I say, effectively feed your livestock, you only need, one of the 3 foods, to actually get them up and running. and having all three of them in the food trough doesn't make them more productive than just having TMR. So with that in mind, and the fact that, you know, the sheep don't need grass either, the sheep can live quite comfortably on hay with no change to their productivity, it kind of just makes sense that we just focus purely on making sure that we have TMR materials available, which is just hay and silage is all we need to make TMR. Once we've got that, we don't have to worry about grass. So all of this grass here we can actually turn into silage bales, some of which we will be storing, putting into our shed. And then in there we'll have, once our first crop comes in, we'll have some hay, some straw in there as well. So we'll have some straw for bedding, we'll have hay and silage, which we can use to make TMR, and also use the hay for feeding sheep. And then we'll have a load of silage bales that we can sell and raise some funds for our farm. So that's kind of the order of business as far as our baling is going to go. Whether we're going to get a second cut on this field or not, I'm not sure. We might see if we can do a second cut, but what I might well do is use the time to actually start prepping this field for next year. So we'll look at getting it split up. We're going to need to install some kind of pathway. I've been toying with the idea potentially of having a little shed constructed at the top of the pathway as well, just to help create that break between our grass meadow and what will become our crop field. So we've got a little bit of work that needs to get done, and it's a question of when do we start doing that work. Swing around a bit. There we go. Just continue to mow this section out. And as I say, I will be straightening up in a moment so that we can just kind of try and figure out just how much space we can actually create on this. We use the grass burrows that we're creating as a kind of a guideline as to what sort of size of field we'll end up with. So I'm going to jump ahead a bit, make some progress mowing out this field, and then we'll come back and we'll get a good idea as to just how much space is going to be available to us for a crop field, because driving up and down it does feel like quite a big area, and it's going to be quite a reasonably straight field. It won't be perfectly straight. This is a slightly odd shaped field, but it will give us a good kind of approximation, I think, as to how our field might well look. So, as I say, I'll jump ahead and I'll catch up with you in a little while. So made quite a nice, good bit of progress on this field. You can see it's, for the most part, quite straight. I mean, there are bits to the side that are obviously less so. If we spin around here, you can see it kind of angles off towards, you know, following the hedge over there. So it breaks away from the straight line on that side, and it does the same a little bit around there. It kind of indents in where those trees are right above the tractor, and then pushes out a bit on that side and a little bit on that side as well. But relatively speaking, this is quite a straight piece of land, so with a little bit of prep work, this could actually become a very, very useful crop field for us indeed. And you can see in terms of length, a little bit longer than field 1. Field 1 already is a pretty good size. This one's going to be a little bit longer, and I think in terms of width, similar to field 1. You know, field 1 also does that kind of thing where it doesn't run straight, it runs at a slight angle, so it kind of pushes out, especially on that side down there. It pushes out towards the water, and on this side obviously you can see it pushes in onto our grass field. But if we can take whatever we get on field 1 as a kind of a benchmark for what we might get on this field, you know, I think we'll be looking at kind of similar yields So that'll be a good kind of test for us when it comes to harvest, to see just how much crop we could potentially get off this field. You know, if we would plant the same crop, obviously a different crop will net a different result. But if we were to, you know, say put soybean on this next year, we could use this field here as a rough kind of benchmark. Now, we would still need to treat this field with lime and make sure that the ground is sort of prepared properly. So maybe ploughing it, maybe maybe a subsoil, probably plough it up. But it really does give you that kind of indication as to just what we could potentially make. I've just missed a little tuft there. Let's just grab that. There we go. So let's go put the mowers away. Let's go get our windrowers. Get everything rowed up, and then we can come back with our baler and start wrapping all of that grass to leave on the field for a couple of days to turn into silage. We're going to stay in the 7R, I think, for most of the day today. Obviously, we'll switch over to the 6M when we need to start thinking about stacking the bales. But as I say, we're going to be leaving these bales out for a couple of days. So that's not essentially something that's going to happen for a while. So most of the work, if not all of the work that we do today, will be done in the 7R. We'll just, it's a nice, comfortable tractor to ride in. Saves us having to, you know, switch around and mess around, you know, with our setups. We'll do our windrowing in this, as well as getting our baling done in this as well. Let's just back up a touch more. Turned on. And off we go. So now we have a field to row up. We'll kind of do the central section first, and then once we've done that, we'll sort of work around the edges, get those done as well. So once again, I'm going to crack on a little bit, and I will catch up with you in a little while. Main part of the field is done and rowed. Now we're just kind of tidying up the edges and blending these kind of sort of side rows together a little bit in the process. There we go. Don't want to miss anything. Want to make sure we get it all. There we go. So now we have a couple of shorter rows on the inside and then one long connecting row all the way down the side. And we'll do the same along the bottom as well. I've deliberately, with the way I've done my rows, stopped a little bit short so that I can tidy this up into a nice clean row here along the bottom. Like so. Still got this section on the side to do here. This is where it gets a little bit trickier. Trying to make sure that we get everything without really leaving anything. I might be just leaving that little clump there, and we'll attack that with the baler individually. It might be the easiest way to get that section there. And again, I've got the lights on purely so I can make sure I can see where the grass is in the shadows. Let's just work this corner piece here. So get back in position. Drop our blades down. There we go. Just make that gradual sweeping turn. And then we'll straighten up. Try and do the same again. And then we've got to do this the other side of that sort of tree indentation as well. We'll have to tidy up that side using a kind of a similar method to this, I think. Just this tiny little clump just here. It's always these little fiddly bits that get quite messy when you have sort of a weirdly shaped section of the field to work with. You try not to disturb other rows too much. There we go, a couple of little spots, but I can kind of live with those. Again, we can just hoover those up with the baler. So let's run along here. This is where we kind of need to blend into our pre-made windrow a little bit. And then break away from that. You can see those shadows looking quite dark just in front of us because of the trees. It does get a little bit trickier to see what we're doing without the lights. If I turn them off, you can see how hard it is to actually see some of the grass. So the lights are there just purely as a visual aid for making sure that we are windrowing up everything. And just a thin little spattering there. I suppose we should tidy that up as well. Let's just angle ourselves in a little bit. There we go. And I think we'll pull that away from the hedge a little bit more. So if I drop down about here, we can just divert the path of that windrow just a little bit, like that. There we go. And that tidies that up nicely. So there we go, our windrowing is done. Now we need to go grab the baler and start baling up all those windrows. But there you can see quite clearly just how much ground we've actually got. And you can also see how the field steps out now, thanks to these kind of staggered rows on the side here. You can see just how much of a step it is from a straight line all the way down to how much extra we would have at this end of the field. And obviously we saw it a little bit over there, not to the same degree, but you got that kind of impression over there as well. So This isn't something that we could just ever just leave a worker on and the whole thing would get done. You know, this is something that we would have to be involved in ourselves, but that's half the fun, isn't it? Getting involved and doing the work, or at least being involved in the work a little bit more. So we'll get ourselves a combination of plough, maybe a small one and a large one, the smaller one to do the edges and the large one to run up and down the middle. We'll get those on lease. I suppose I better give this a clean, actually. It's looking pretty dirty, isn't it? We'll get those on lease at some point later in the year, and we'll carve up that section of field. And we'll create a pathway, I think, that runs up between that section that we've just mowed and the section we did mow a couple of days ago as well. Now we're returning to the field with our lovely and expensive Kuhn round baler wrapper. It's actually, I say expensive, it's a lot cheaper than it was last time around with Farming Sim 17. That thing was, I think, pushing 120,000. This time it's, what, 79? So it's considerably cheaper than it was. But it's still a pricey piece of equipment. But given how much money it's going to make us, I think it's kind of worth it. So let's start with the bales. Once again, I'm going to start working on the sort of inland sections first. And then once we've done those, then we'll start moving over to the fiddlier bits going around the borders and the edges. So we're looking to start somewhere about here, I think it is. So let's make sure we're unfolded, lowered, turned on. There we go. Set cruise control down to 8. It's just my preferred running speed for when I'm baling. Slightly slower than potential speed, but just means that I don't have to keep slamming the brakes on as we get close to 4,000 litres. Just allows me to be a little bit more controlled. You can see the back of the baler going up, bale dropping, wrapping started, and we can move on and start making the next bale. Are we going to have enough time? There we go. If we unload the bale, and they can see there's our unloaded bale there in the background. So we have got enough time between unloading, or between wrapping and unloading, before the next bale is ready at this speed as well. It's another reason I like to run slightly slower, so I don't have long delays. It means I can kind of keep running at a fairly consistent speed all the way through. Obviously there are times when it is going to slow us down a bit, but I just find this is a much more comfortable speed to work when using the round baler with wrapper like this. Runs at 8 miles an hour, as long as the windrows aren't too big as well. If you've got very, very fat windrows, so if, for example, you're using the Kuhn merger and you're essentially doubling up the amount of material in your windrows compared to what I've got here, then yes, you're going to have a lot more material to process, and it will get processed quite quickly. So you'll probably need to slow your speed down a little bit, but with the standard sort of windrower that we're using, 8 miles an hour, I find, tends to be a very good running speed indeed. And of course, if you want to do the Bale bet game, then by all means, let me know in the comments your guess. Obviously, we'll find out a little bit towards the end. I'm not going to guess on this one as to how many bales I'm going to make, because I honestly have no idea what to expect on this. I suppose I should guess, really, shouldn't I? Let's have a look. So we made 1, 2, 3 bales plus the one in the back. That's 4. We made 4 bales on a single row. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 kind of complete rows. That's another 44 bales, so we're talking around 50 so far. I would say we're probably looking again at about 60 odd bales. I would say maybe a little more than 60. I'm going to go 60 to 65 bales is my kind of estimate. But yeah, if you have a guess, then obviously let me know what you thought in the comments, and we'll see who was closer. There we go. That is bale number 30 on the field. You can still see we've got a fair old bit to do. So I think 60 is a pretty reasonable guess. 60 to 65 bales. I think that's easily achievable, given how much we've still got left to kind of bale up. We're about halfway through, well, just over halfway through the mega rows. You know, these long rows that run straight down the middle, because I did do a couple of them side by side before I started switching to this kind of more staggered every other row kind of method. But even so, with the border passes to do and everything else, I'd say we're probably only about halfway through the grass, and I say we spat out just over 30 bales now. So yeah, I think 65 is probably a pretty accurate kind of estimate. Now, if we can get a good price on these bales, then that is potentially quite a tidy sum of money. Don't know what the kind of local economy price for silage bales is yet. We'll have to find that out as we sell them. But hopefully it'll be something quite tasty. Right, let's figure out where do I go from here. I suppose we get back onto these other rows, these spacer rows here. Try and keep the baler straight as we can. Oops. There we go. So let's see what we get from the rest of the field. The main up and down section of the field is done, and now we're kind of working on these little side bits. I've already cleared out that far corner, sort of top right over there. That's now been cleaned out. Haven't done that little side over there, and obviously we're working on this section over here at the moment. But once these are done, all that will be left will be the kind of horseshoe border that we've got that runs around the field. That kind of distorted U shape that we've got. That'll be the final run. I'm not sure how many bales we've actually created. I've lost count. Let's take a quick look on the options screen. 54 we've created so far. So that's quite a few. That's quite a few bales. I've got to say we're probably looking at least half a dozen more just on the border alone. Probably more than that. I would say probably about 8 bales on the border. Because don't forget, you know, quite a lot of this border is quite a fat row, and there are still some other little thin bits like that bit just there, those bits over there. So I think at least another 10 bales still to make. Probably more than a dozen bales still to make. So I'm still sticking with my sort of estimate of around 65 bales. I think that's probably going to be fairly close. I don't think it will be exactly 65, but a good kind of benchmark, I think. spin around, grab that section just there, clip the bale. These round bales, I don't know if it's because they've got wrap on or if it's just the angle of the hill, but they have been a little bit more willing to escape. They have been a bit more rolly than we had with the hay bales. You know, they've tried to roll away a bit, and they've rolled down that slope there, and they've crossed over into other windrows while I was going up and down. So not the most ideal of situations. They are a little bit less behaved, and I say I don't know if it's because they've got wrap on or if it's just the contour of the field that's, you know, made them slightly more inclined to try and make a break for freedom. But whatever the reason, you know, it has kind of led to a little bit of a cluster in the centre of the field, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. It should hopefully mean that they're going to be a little bit easier to kind of collect up towards the end, because they'll all be kind of grouped reasonably close together, so it might speed up how quickly we can get them loaded onto a trailer. But don't forget, we're going to be leaving the bales out for, you know, a couple of days to allow them to sort of ferment and turn into silage before we take them to sell them. So they're going to be sat here for a little while. You can see we're into slight debt again, 1,800, nearly £2,000 of debt, and that's just operational debt, unfortunately. We are kind of, as I say, now stuck in limbo. Just missed a little spot there. Just sent those bales rolling away. It's not like they need that much encouragement to move. Like I said, I think it's the wrap. I think that's making them a little bit slippier. I might be wrong. I might just be imagining it. But let's just unload that one here as well. There we go. So let's do our border. There we go. And let's see how many bales we can make at the final count. This is the final kind of run around the field. Everything else has been done now. It's just this kind of border pass that's left to do. But yeah, these bales will be left out for a couple of days. We do have a little bit of debt, and that's not going to go away anytime soon. We don't have any crop left from the previous farmer. There was a little bit of grain left in the silo, but unfortunately it was it was a particularly poor quality. It hadn't been stored very well. Some of it actually started to rot a little bit. So while we were able to make a tiny little bit of cash with, you know, salvaging some of that grain, we had to use that money to then sort of scrub and decontaminate the silo. So effectively, you know, we didn't make any money at all from those little dregs and remainders of grain. Once again, you know, the previous farmer did not do a very good job looking after the fields. He also did not do a very good job looking after the silo as well, and it was in a bit of a disrepair. So we had to spend any money that we did make from those little remaining bits of grain in restoring the quality and functionality of the silo, you know, in improving its integrity, so that, you know, future grains would not be spoiled through to you know, bad care. It's frustrating, but it is what it is. You know, all the equipment from the previous farmer was also in such a bad state of disrepair that it was all just scrapped and sold off by the Hollisters, and they brought all their, you know, brought all new equipment in for us as we were coming in to take over and try and turn things around. You know, a lot of the machinery have just fallen into a really bad state of disrepair. You know, the fields, obviously we know how bad the fields were, and it turns out now even the silo was in a bad shape as well. So at least we've kind of got that rectified and sorted out before it comes to actually storing the grain. That would have been a real problem if we turned up with, you know, 100,000 litres of grain to store and a silo in no fit condition to actually store it. So I mean, we're kind of lucky. As I say, we were able to salvage some of the previous crop, but we had to spend whatever money we made from that on the silo, but it effectively means that our silo has been fixed for free. We haven't had to pay any extra expense to get the silo fully restored and operational and functional again. But it does mean that we missed out on the opportunity to perhaps gain a little bit of extra credit. So we're still very much in the same financial situation we were in a couple of days ago. We're still just kind of ticking over until we get our first round of crops sold and these bales here fermented and sold. So we're still not able to open up with the BGA just yet. We are in need of a little bit more cash before we can afford to go ahead and I've lost my train of thought now. Before we can go ahead and get that bunker open, we need to be able to have a little bit of cash, and we're not, unless we go and sell some hay bales, which I don't really want to do because I've only got 30 in stock. We're kind of just now got to wait until these bales are ready to sell and we can sell these, make some cash, then get our harvests done and get those sold off. So we're kind of into that that waiting stage now. We don't need to do any fertilizing work. We don't need to do any weed work, I hope. We've kind of treated our fields for weeds. So we just have to kind of play the waiting game now. We may possibly do another cut of bales. Oops, I've missed quite a chunk of windrow just there. Let's just go back and grab that. There we go. So yeah, we are just waiting for things to come good. I would have liked to have been able to look at getting some animals in, but again, without having that that money on hand to do it, we are kind of just in a holding pattern now. But this is a lot of bales. We'll get a final tally in just a moment. There's potentially quite a bit of cash on this field, and if we do manage to get a second cut, then that is a sizable chunk of our debts paid, if we can get a second full cut on this field as well. Who knows, I might even do silage bales on that section that we did for hay. All depends on the zoo as to whether or not they're going to need another batch of hay soon. We're not the only supplier of hay and straw. We happen to have some available, so they bought some of our stock, but we're not the only sort of farm in the area that that has product to sell. So we're not always going to be able to rely on the zoo as a source of income. And we do have to be careful how much we leave in storage. We can't just create a whole ton of hay bales and hope that further down the line we'll get another call from Marwell Zoo saying, have you got any stuff to sell? It's not a guarantee, and we can't take that risk. We need bale space for silage baling, for hay baling, for straw baling. We can't just focus entirely on one type of bale and leave ourselves no storage space for anything else. Right, last little bit of grass on the field, and it's just the last little bit of grass. It's not enough for another bale, that's for sure. So we'll probably have to brush that out and get that cleaned off. Let's get that unloaded. Lights off, there we go. And let's see what our final bale tally is for this field here. 69. Ooh, that's even more than I was expecting. I was expecting 60 to 65, hedging my bets close to 65, and we went even further past that. 69 bales of grass that we got off that field that have all been wrapped. In a couple of days they will be silage, and we will be hopefully in a pretty good financial position. Like I said, it all depends on what the local economic value of those bales is going to be. Yeah, if we can get a good price for them, and we're not selling all of them, we're going to be keeping probably half of those bales. Probably keep 30 of those as well. We've got, what, 30... We've got 30 hay bales, so we'll probably keep 30 silage bales as well. That's going to mean we'll have 39 to sell, so that's kind of 1.5 trailers worth of bales. It's not an insanely large amount, but it does mean that if we do a second cut... actually, let's go clean the baler out and make sure that all that grass gets rooted out as well. Completely empty it out, and we'll throw any sort of waste into one of these skips around here. But yeah, it does mean that we're in a pretty strong position. You know, if we do need to do another cut of grass, or we get the opportunity to do another cut of grass, whatever we make on that field, we can sell everything. So that's kind of encouraging, and then that's potentially where the real money's going to be. So let me get this baler cleaned and emptied out, and then we'll get it washed and put away, and we'll start looking at potentially moving some of those bales a little bit. I don't really want to go skewering them at the moment. We might have to... trying to think how we do this. You know, we could theoretically do with a bale grab, you know, to protect the wrap on the bales. I'll have to have a think about this. So I'll crack on with getting this emptied and cleaned, and I'll catch up with you in a moment. There we go. Baler emptied, cleaned, and put away. Let's lock the shed up for the day. There we go. Been a good, successful afternoon. Well, I say afternoon, morning and afternoon. Almost a full day on the field. But we have done what we needed to do, which was to get that grass cut, mowed, rowed, and baled. Park up here for a second. Let's make our way past some of our little bits and bobs over there. So the next kind of plan, or the next kind of task, is to start to think about how to put in a nice kind of dirt path. You can see we've got this kind of rough ground over here. We're going to try and just remove these bits of ground along here and basically run a path that goes up the side of this hedgerow all the way up here. And my kind of plan as well is to put something in at the top end. So the pathway is going to keep running all the way up here like this. It's going to run along here like this, and this is essentially going to be the edge of the field just here. This kind of grass line that we've got. There you can see all of our bales there. They'll be out there for the next day or two fermenting before we start to collect those up. And the pathway is going to continue up to here. And then what I'm thinking of doing is having up here a kind of a little bit of a clearing. And I'm thinking maybe I could possibly turn this into a mini storage area. Have perhaps even have a shed or something up here. Maybe somewhere to store some silage bales up here, perhaps. Or maybe we could get a wood chipper put in up here, and we could store wood chips over here, perhaps. I don't know. There's something we could do with this area, but I want the pathway to kind of run up here and create a clear line of definition and separation between the grass meadow on this side, then the pathway just here, and then the grass field just here. And then, as I say, maybe a little feature, something up here in this space here. Maybe just a shed, maybe a cabin. We could do something with this area. I'm not quite sure yet exactly what, but we will have something up here in this little space. So I need to have a little think about exactly what we're going to implement just there. I've got a few ideas knocking around in the back of my head. It's just not just a question of what's going to be feasible, you know, in terms of what works, but also how much it's going to cost us. You can see here the birds going after the worms in the field. Obviously we've kind of disturbed the ground a little bit with the mowers. A few worms have poked their heads up, and the birds there going straight for the worms, trying to find them and grab them. So at least they're here on this field, and they're not on our crops. I'd rather they're just trying to get some worms out of this freshly cut area of grass over here, and they're leaving our crop alone. Let's just hop over the fence just here. Just cut through. There we go. And you can see our crops growing quite nicely. There's our scarecrows. You can see sort of dotted throughout the field. We've got one there, one off there in the distance, one there obviously, another one there, one way at the back over there, and then one just there as well. So we've got plenty of scarecrows, 6 on this field, protecting our soybean crop. And I don't see any birds around, so it looks as though they're doing their job. Let's have a little wander through. Hopefully they're not nestled in here. Just got to be careful where we tread. Obviously, you don't want to damage our plants, but I'm not seeing any birds around. I mean, they do seem to, as I say, be focusing on the grass field at the moment. How much of that is to do with the mowing, how much of it's to do with our scarecrows, who could really say, but our crop is protected. That's the important thing, so we'll let that continue to grow. That'll be worth some nice cash when we do come to sell it. So I'm going to make my way back towards the farmhouse. I'm going to start planning out exactly what I'm going to be doing. I'll probably be out here again later with a shovel and start trying to dig up some of that turf. I think to create that kind of pathway. It's already kind of thinning out a little bit from us driving up and down there, and who knows, maybe just frequent driving will help alleviate some of the grass there. But if we can uproot some of this grass through here and create that kind of nice kind of mud field or mud path running up there, but solid ground like this rather than just a boggy mud, that I think would work quite nicely. So there we go. A bit of an early finish for it today. We've done everything that we needed to get done today. We've just got to sit back, wait for crops to continue to grow, wait for those bales to ferment, and there's not a lot else we can do other than kind of work on our pathway there. Maybe if this grass grows a little bit overnight, we can look at perhaps doing that. We might see if there's any work that needs to be done in the surrounding area as well. We might look and see if there's anybody else who needs some work doing. That might be what we do tomorrow, sort of go off and help out some of the local businesses. We'll see what needs to be done. But that's it from me for a little bit of a short day today. Thanks for watching. I am Jim Bob, and I'll be back with some more Marwell Manor very soon.